Okay, so last time we were here at this slide, and what we were trying to show here was like when we are using regularization, it tries to convert a non-convex function, which I already discussed in our last lecture, that how regularization is actually helping us in uh, convexifying the function, which is already a non-convex function. And you saw here also how how this function, which is a non-convex function, still it tries to make it convex, but it's not that much of convex. But still, some points where we have some flat curve here will be converted into some slopy curve, so that if you initialize somewhere here, then then you can easily roll down and fall into the valley here. So that type of stuff was not possible in case when you were at this point, because when you initialize here, then because the curvature is nearly flat, so the point will nearly flat means like this point will go gradually down, but still it will stuck here at this point. So that type of thing is not is avoided when you are using regularization, which will actually convert this flat region into a slopy region, which is given over here. And even you see the top profile here, looking from the top side, if you look from the top view, you will see something like this, and you can see now how this purple line is actually falling down into the valley, whereas in earlier case this purple line was going this way, and the only reason was now the curvature is formed, which was earlier a flat region. So in last lecture we saw how convexifying of the convexifying of the cost function was possible when we were using regularization. So today we will see how to select the optimal value of the lambda, like which lambda will be optimal for a particular problem. So again, I am repeating here the cost function that we have discussed so many times. So this is the original cost function that we have, and we discussed earlier also, plus we have this regularization factor also. Here lambda is the regularization parameter, and r is the complex function that involves w and theta. So both of them will be parameterizable, and I have already discussed some details about it in our earlier lecture. So what you will do now is you will actually solve this loss function by operating this arg minimization on this particular loss function. So what it will do is it will minimize this loss function, and it will throw out the values theta hat and w hat, which will actually minimize this particular loss function. So this is what this actually this particular expression is saying, that what value of theta and w will actually minimize this argument. So that's why we are calling it as arg min. So we have to see the value that will throw out by this optimization will be theta hat and w hat. So what you will do now is you will again plot the training curve and the validation curve for these theta and w that you will obtain here. So once you obtain the theta and w from this loss function, you will use these theta and w's here to evaluate your training loss and validation loss. And you do it repeatedly for different values of lambda. So when you change the lambda, earlier your lambda, let us say, was 0.1, then if you changed it by 10 times, or maybe 1 by 10th of it, so it will be 0.01. So if you are doing something like this, for each value of lambda, you will have some theta and w coming up, which is theta hat and w hat, and for that theta hat and w hat, you will calculate the value of training and the validation loss. And you do it repeatedly, and once you do it and you plot that curve, what you will get is this. So this will be the performance measure actually that will give you, and that will which you can see, and from here you can find the optimal value of lambda. So as you can see now here, again here the lambda is actually varying from small to high. Please note, earlier here we had epochs. Last time when we were discussing the training and the validation loss, on the x-axis we had epochs. Now we have regularization parameter lambda. and lambda is actually varying from small value to a very high value. So you can see now when the lambda is small, the validation loss, as you can see from the green curve, will be very high, and the training loss will be very small, as you can see over here. So this is actually quite evident also, as I told you last time, when you have a function f, when you have a loss function, which is the original loss function here, plus lambda times the regularizer. So when your lambda is very small, then the w's that are involved, the w's that are the decision boundaries of the classifier that are involved will be also small, or it will not be penalized because your lambda is small. So if your lambda is small and your w will not be penalized, then obviously for the training set your error will be very small because it will overfit. Whereas the validation loss will be high because at this particular region where I have where I'm showing you as a shaded region, this because this is the overfitting situation, then obviously the validation loss will be high, as we have seen earlier also. And similarly, when you have lambda very high, then you know that when you pull this value, when you crank this value to very high value, and you are actually optimizing the whole argument, which is L or that is the original loss function plus the lambda of R times W, and when you are cranking this lambda up, then obviously in order to minimize the whole expression, your W has to go down. So if your W has to go down, then most of the parameters of the decision boundary, that is the trainable parameters, which are W and theta, will go towards 0. So if they goes towards 0 means your boundary will become very simple boundary. It will not be a complex boundary which was earlier. So when it becomes very simple, it means you are entering into a biased region. So here, this situation which is shown over here is actually a high bias situation where your training as well as the validation loss will be high. So this type of curve you will be able to see when you run your neural network with different values of lambda. And this is the point where you can find it out to be an optimal point where you can select your lambda opt. So this is the optimal value where we can train our neural network so that it will have your not it will have an optimal value for validation as well as for the training. Though it's not an optimal point for training, but it is far better than this region where we are actually having a higher loss compared to this point. So this is actually showing you how to select lambda if you want to select it for a particular neural network. Okay, there is one more curve which actually plots the validation as well as the training plots when you gradually increase the training size. So if you have a very small training size of 100 samples, and then if you gradually increase it to 200 samples, and you go on increasing the training samples, from first of all you go from 0 to 100, then 0 to 200. So if you go something like this, as you increase the training size, you will plot the validation and the training loss, and what you will find is that the validation loss will follow this curve and the training loss will follow the green curve. So if this is the situation when you increase the training size and your validation and training loss are following this curve, and let us say that the pink highlighted line is the desired performance that you want. You want some desired performance of validation as well as the training loss, which I am indicating by this horizontal dotted lines. So if this is the desired performance, then we again have two different regions for this particular type of curve. And the two different regions are, the first region is this one, which I am calling it as high variance region. And why we are calling it as high variance region? Because again it is characterized by low training error and high validation error. So that's why it is called as high variance region. And once you continue to increase your training size, then what you observe here is at this point where I am showing you this this region, which is the highlighted region, we are calling it as high bias. So now, the high bias situation, the training as well as the validation loss are nearly close to each other, but they are very high. The value is very high. Here also you can see they are close, but value is very high. So same goes here. In case of high bias, you are having this region. So now there are few important points that we have to take care to deal with these different regions like high bias or high variance. So if you want to if your model is suffering from high variance, then you can take some steps to move from high variance to a low bias and low variance region. And if you are having a high bias, then you take some steps so that you convert this model to a low bias and low variance region. So we will see what type of steps you can take to move from this point to this point and from this point to this point, which we are calling as the optimal point where we have low bias and low variance. So when you have high variance, so what are the symptoms for that? The high variance symptoms are that your training error is much lower than the validation error. This is the first symptom, as you can see from the plot also. Here in case of high variance, your training error is much lower than the validation error. And secondly, the training error is lower than the desired performance that you actually want. So you can see here our desired performance is this dash line and our training error is much lower than that also. And validation error is again higher than the desired performance. That is also evident from this graph. As you can see, your orange curve is much higher than that of the desired performance. So how to convert a high variance model into a low bias and low variance situation? That can be done when you are if your model is suffering from high variance, then what you can do is you can do all these 3 points which I have written here. The first point is you can add more training data. So if you add more training data, there will be a chance when your model which is overfitting will actually become will be a situation where it will become it will tend to become to reach this optimal point. So as you can see from here also, uh, just a second, I'll highlight this. So as you can see, when your training size is increasing, you can see how these two curves are getting close to each other, and that is what you actually want. So you can make them more close to each other by increasing the training data. So if you increase the training data a lot, then chances are that your high variance model will come and reach to the optimal point where you want it to have low variance and low bias. And the second thing is to reduce the model complexity. This you already know that if you have a model with which is a very highly complex model having multiple features which are weighted by multiple weights. So if you want to reduce the model complexity, you can do it by making some of the weights which are attached to some of the complex features by moving it towards zero. And that movement of weights towards zero can be done by using regularizers. So what you can do is you can crank the regularization parameter up. So when you crank this regularization parameter up, your weights will go towards zero. So when your weights will go towards zero, there will be a chance that your model will become will move out from high variance and it will become a low variance and low bias model. And the third option is bagging. This I have not discussed, but this is the concept which we are taking from machine learning. So if you have studied your machine learning course, I think you must be knowing this. So this is the third option which we call as bagging, where we use multiple models and we average them out and see what best results we can get from that. So this concept I am not discussing here as it is coming from your machine learning concept. So this is I am leaving, but this is the third remedy that you can take in order to overcome your high variance situation where your model is suffering from high variance. The second thing is if your model is suffering from high bias, then the symptoms for that are that your both training and validation loss will be higher than your desired performance. That is the symptom. And the remedy for that will be use complex models. This is very easy, right? So if you have less features, try to incorporate more features. That is actually in turn is this second statement. So when you add more features, it means you are actually incorporating more complex models, and you can also reduce the lambda. So if you reduce your lambda, and if you already have a very complex model, then the w's will not be penalized, and it will try to incorporate, and it will try to make it move from high bias to a situation where it is low bias and low variance. So these are the two options that you can do. And the third one is boosting, which we have already discussed. That also helps in actually, because we are in boosting, we are gradually increasing the features in each and every step. And when you gradually increase the features from, going from a very high bias situation, and you gradually increase it, it will become more and more complex, and you will find a point where you will have a optimal situation where you will get low bias and low variance situation. And also note, when your model is suffering from high bias, so even if you add more data, so even if you collect more data, will not help you out. It will not help when you add more data and if your model is suffering from high bias. This can be seen pictorially also. Like if you have some classes like this, and one class is this and another class is like this, and if your model has a high bias, then obviously the model will be doing something like this. So even if you increase the data set to a larger amount like this, even if you increase more data set like this towards this side and this here, it will still be like this. So this shows that even if you increase the training data, will not really help you out in moving out from high bias problems. So this is the high bias situation. So
Sir, can you explain the boosting part again?
see, the boosting thing I have already discussed in our last lecture, and it was very, in very great details. So if you missed it out, you can look into that. But the overall intuition for boosting was at that time also we were continuously adding, features at each and every step. In the first step, we started with the low bias situation, and in the second step, we added slightly more complex features, and then at the third step, we again added slightly more complex features. So each and every step we were adding complexity in the feature model, and then we were checking out our training and validation loss, and then we found that at certain point your optimal validation and optimal training will be achieved. So that type of thing will help you out in moving from high bias to low bias and low variance model. So you can check that out. We have discussed this boosting in very details in our earlier lectures. Okay. So if you have any other questions, please let me know. Okay. So just to make you aware of what is actually going on when you simulate all these curves, I have plotted out some practical plots so that you can see what is exactly. Obviously, you have done your some of in your lab also these plots, but as we are moving behind from what we are giving you in the lab, unfortunately because of some non synchronization in the teaching as well as the occurrence of the labs, that we cannot help. But what you can see from this, the practical plots that I am showing over here, is the different type of training and validation schemes that you will observe. So here I was taking Wisconsin cancer data set, which is having two classes, malignant and benign cancers, and actually it has 32 features and 570 data points. So you have a class matrix where your dimension is 32 cross 570. So it's a 32 features and 570 data points in the Wisconsin cancer data set. So what I am doing right now here is I am using only a single hidden layer with two neurons. So only one hidden layer which is having two neurons. And here you have at the input, how many inputs will be there? It will be 32, and we have 570 points, and I am actually creating this neural network where we have this single hidden layer with two neurons. And actually I am using a splitting the training and the validation splitting with using seed of 0. So this is the initial seed that I have taken and it's 0. So what I found is the training and the validation loss was looking something like this, and it some way or the other matches with what we have studied. So it's performing well here. But now when I increase, no, but when I do the seeding as 22, so when I am doing a training test splitting with the seed of 22, then something like this happened. So can you reason out why, earlier the curve was like this and now it has become like this? Can anybody tell me the reason? The only thing that I have changed is the seed. Can anybody reason out why it's like that? I am using that same neural network, but the only thing that I have changed is the seed. Okay, so the only, as you know, the only thing that I have changed is the seed. So seed is actually what it is doing is it is actually what it is doing is it is partitioning the partitioning the complete training data set or the complete data set into as you know, we are doing the partitioning of the data set into training and validation data set. So when we are using seed equal to 0, then you have some data points here and some data points here for the validation loss. So at that time, the distribution that you will obtain for the points in the training data set is this, and the distribution that you obtain for the validation data set is this. But when you used seed is equal to 22, then it might be the case, that you are again partitioning this into two parts. First is the training and the validation, same story, but now the distribution is changed. So earlier the training data set was having some other distribution, but now the training data set at seed equal to 22 is some other distribution. And similarly for validation loss also, the distribution will become different. So if the two distributions become different, then these curves will become different. And now you can see at this particular at this particular situation, it is easy for the optimizer, like for this particular data set, it is easy for the optimizer to settle down at the lowest values, which you can see after this it is easily settling down to the minimum values and it's not going further down. But at this situation you can see here the settling at the minima is still not happening. The settling of the minima is still not happening. It is still going down like this, and we don't know how many more epochs it will require to make it completely flat. So this means that for this particular data set which I am discussing here, for this particular data set, the training and the validation splitting is not allowing this particular training and validation loss to settle down at 500 epochs. So it will take more epochs to settle down further, and we don't know that. I have not checked it out, but you can see that based on your training and validation splitting, how it will happen, like the two curves will become different. So these are the two aspects of what I wanted to show you when you split the data set, and it's not possible that when you do a random splitting, always your training and validation will become totally different. Now what I have done is, I have used that single hidden layer only with two neurons, and the seed is 22, but now I have used dropout, a dropout of zero point 0.2. We will discuss this in details in our coming slides, and we will see how this dropout works. But when you use a dropout of zero point 0.2, you will get something like this. And now you can see that the training loss is noisy, and even the validation loss is not noisy, and it is completely noise free. There is a slight noise, but still we can avoid it as compared to this one, which is the training loss. And one more thing that we will observe here is that the validation loss is less than the training loss. Earlier what we were saying was that the training loss is less than the validation loss. So can anybody tell me these two answers to these two questions? That the first one is why training loss is getting higher than the validation loss, And the second, why training loss is having these noisy fluctuations. So can anybody reason out why this is so? Are you able to hear my voice? My voice is clear to everyone? A quick feedback?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So for these two questions that I have posed to you, can you answer me why it's like that? Okay. So the first question which I asked you is that the training loss is suffering from this noisy profile. The reason for that is because you are actually you are we will discuss this why it is noisy, but just to give you a quick feedback on a quick overview of what why noisy profile is coming, it's because you are actually dropping some of the neurons. So when you drop some of the neurons, it's like you are actually injecting a salt and pepper noise to the image or to the data set. So we will see all this in more details when we will be into the next slides. But for now, you can understand that this noisy profile is coming because you are actually injecting a noise into the system by shutting off some of the neurons and making some of the neurons active and other ones off. So that type of shutting phenomena is actually equivalent to injecting the noise into the system. We will see how that is possible, but that shutting off on and off is equivalent to adding noise. That's why your training is suffering from the noise, but your validation is not suffering from noise because in the testing time we do not shut off any of the neurons and they are still there. So there is no shutting off of the neurons, so this means there is no injection of the noise. So if there is no injection of the noise, your validation loss is still better and it's not fluctuating. That's why there is no noise in the validation profile. Second thing, why your validation loss is less than the training loss, where we see normally our training loss to be less than validation loss. And the reason for that is in the training session, when you are doing training, the number of neurons that you will be using during the dropout is very less as compared to the number of neurons that you will use in the validation time, because in validation you are not dropping off any of the neurons, whereas in case of your training set when your training time you are always dropping out some neurons based on the probability. So that we will discuss if you don't know the concept of dropout, we will discuss that. But what I am showing is during the training time, as some of the neurons will be dropped off. So what happens is the approximation of the function will be poor because you have less number of neurons to approximate the function. But whereas in case of validation, you all of the neurons are there and they will do their job efficiently. So a proper approximation of the function will be possible when number of neurons are more, whereas in case of your training the number of neurons are less. So that's why in this particular case your validation loss is less than the training loss. Okay, so this is again doing the now the thing is what I have done is now the input layer is already there. We have the input dimension 32. So we have this 32 neurons, but now I have increased the hidden layer to 16 neurons. Earlier there were only uh, 2 neurons here. So now I have increased it to 16 neurons. So when I have increased it to 16 neurons, you can see now the curve is much better as compared to the earlier case. And now you can see this is the curve related to when you are doing a 16 neuron classification. If you have a hidden layer of 16 neurons. But now what I have done is again I have split it at 0, split at 0. This seed I have taken it as 0. So 0 seeding here, but in here the seeding is done as 30. So I have done 30 here and in this case 0. So now again you can see that at 0, at 30 splitting, the training and the validation loss are they are coming very proper in terms of the what we have understood in case of theory. So whatever we have done theoretically, it's matching that. Whereas in this case, it is also matching, but now your validation loss is going up, whereas your training loss is still going down. And the reason for this to go up is because at this splitting of 0, it might be the case that your training set will have images which are very hard to train in case of validation dataset. It might be the case. Like when you do the splitting with 0, so the images that have come to the validation dataset, it will be very difficult for the optimizer to actually optimize that type of images. It's very hard for them. It's very hard for the optimizer to do that. That's why the error is going up here for this particular split. So this actually shows you, like if you increase the neurons to 16 and doing the splitting, this is the type of profile that you can get. Okay, so now what I have done is in this profile, in this one, I have actually added a dropout of 0.2. So now you can see again, it has, it's matching the theory that we have understood. So that type of error which was created here is gone. And then now I have increased the dropout to 0.5. Earlier it is 0.2. So again you will see something similar. Okay, now what I have done here is something crazy. So what I have done is I have used, at the input we have, 32 points, and I have increased the layers, to 5. I have used 5 hidden layers, and in each of these hidden layers I have used, around 20 hidden neurons. So I have created a very highly over complex model of 5 hidden neurons, 5 hidden layers with 20 neurons in each, and then I am doing a classification here. So it's as you can see, the data set is very small and it's a very highly overkill. You are actually making such a highly complex neural network which is actually not required, and now you can see the plots for that highly over complex model, and it's seriously not performing well, and it's very difficult to actually find out the optimal point. So this also shows you an important thing, that if your data set is simple, please do not go for highly over complex models. First of all, if the data set is simple and if you are able to solve that problem from a typical machine learning point of view, you take that. There is no point in going to deep learning. And if your model is if your data set is very heavy and highly dimensional, then you go for deep learning models. So this is actually showing you that small picture, that if your problem is a small problem and you are using a highly over complex model, this type of situation will come. So that is this is a one of the situations. Okay, there is one more situation where you have unrepresentative data set. So by unrepresentative data set means if your image has noisy images, or if it is having a blurred images, let us say, and if you are doing a seeding of, let us say, 0, and when you do a seeding of 0, then it might be the case that some of the images from that data set will come to the training data set and some of the images will come to the validation data set. So what happens is, at particular seed equal to 0, let us say, if you have these images which are noisy or blurred, and they are totally not it's a data set of noisy images. So when you do a splitting to training and validation, so you have this here, training and validation splitting. So it might be the case that at this particular seed 0, the training images that you are getting over here are not that representative of the actual images if you have noise free. So that noise free image representation is not able or is not possible here when you have this type of images available in this training data set, and if that is the situation, this type of curve will happen. So this type of curve will be randomly going up and down, and you cannot see anything going on here. So that means the images that came to your training data set are not that representative of the actual data set. And this curve shows you another point where your validation data set is actually not the good representative of the data set. So you can see how validation data set is actually fluctuating up and down, and it's completely going crazy. So that means your validation data set is not a good representation of the original data set. So any questions related to what I have shown you here? Otherwise we will move forward. Okay. So now, as I discussed in the very first, lecture when we started all these learning curves and all that type of stuff, is the need for testing data set. Maybe you can recall that when we were discussing when we started our lectures, I told you that we have to have a motivation of including the testing data set. So now we will see what is the motivation of doing that. So in earlier case till now, what we were doing is we had our original data set, and what we were doing, we were dividing it into two parts. One was training data set and another one was validation data set. But now what we are saying is these two are also not enough. These two are not enough. They are okay if the data set is if the amount of data set that you have is large, then we can go for this type of splitting. You can still do training and validation, but that is if your data set is small, then you can do this. But if you have a large data set, then you can still make your model more robust by doing this type of splitting. And we will see why testing is important and why testing is different from validation. So to prove our point that why we need testing along with validation, here is the thing. So this is actually showing you a reason why we have to include the testing samples. So what I have done is I have taken this image here. This image is actually having randomly distributed samples. So they are not it's not like we used to have this type of classification, right? When we have data something like this, or and some of the data here. So we are not looking at this type of situation where the data is separated by some nonlinear or linear boundary. But what we are doing is we are randomly placing the two classes of 0 and x, let us say, and it's like this. So there is no clear cut boundary here. So it's completely random. And you can see, since the data set is completely random, then by probabilistic theory, what can you say about that? If you want to classify it using any classification boundary, then as the probabilistic theory is concerned, and if you have two classes and if they are completely random points, then what can you say about the ideal decision boundary? Like, what will be the maximum value that it can predict? Anybody? So if you have any model that will try to separate the two boundaries here, if it tries to do that, what do you think, what will be the maximum value the maximum value of the probability that model will predict out? Any idea? Okay, so as you know that the data points are completely random, so it will be 50-50% chance. So the model, whatever model that you will try to fit over here, it should actually produce 50% as the probabilistic output, because you have two classes and the data points are completely random. But now the situation comes that if you do the splitting into training and validation splits like this. So what you are doing, you are dividing this data set into train and validation splitting. Then when you do the cross validation thing, which we have already discussed, then you will get a boundary which is something like this. But surprisingly, this cross validation is giving you 70% accuracy. So it's completely surprising. Like, from probabilistic point of view, what we are saying is it has to have a 50%, the maximum that the classifier can throw out a probability will be 50%, but this particular model is throwing out 70% accuracy on the cross validation data set. So that means there is some problem even in the approach that we have already discussed. So what is that problem? The problem is this. So there might be a situation where your cross validation model, the cross validation model that you are doing overfits the validation data set and particularly model selection. So what you are doing in validation scheme was you are actually selecting different models. So based on the you are selecting the model which will give you a minimum validation loss. So if you go back to your earlier lecture on validation that we have discussed, like how we do cross validation. So in that, what we have done is the minimum validation error that we will encounter will be will give you a optimal model parameters. So what you are doing here in when you are doing cross validation is you are actually overfitting the validation data set by selecting the model. So you are actually some way or the other indirectly overfitting the model selection over there. So in order to avoid that, what you do is you take out some data set from the validation and make it as a testing data set. So this testing data set will have data which is neither tested on training, neither tested on validation, and it's actually an unbiased estimate, and it will be acting as an unbiased estimator for your model. So it's completely unbiased. So earlier we saw that the training samples were biased and it was not able to predict the overfitting of the models. Validation data set is biased in terms of model selection because some way or the other it is actually selecting a optimal model from a given set of models. So, so we can say it is biased in selecting that. But now, since testing is not used in either of the training and the validation, so it is acting as a unbiased samples. So they are not tested in either of the training and the testing. So either in the training and the validation. So we will use this as our parameter to judge the effectiveness of the classifier. So when we do that, so you can see some dotted lines which I have shown here. So the lines that I am showing over here, they are the testing data sets. It's difficult to see, but these testing data sets are highlighted by pink lines. At the boundary, you can see here. You have this it is pink line over here on purple line, sorry, purple line covering all these data points. So we call this as testing, and all the blue points, all the blue boundaries to the points are validation data set. So these testing data sets when imposed on this particular classifier, which is actually coming over here, then we saw 52% in the accuracy during the testing data set. So now you can see it's actually mapping to our justification of probabilistic theory, where we see that where we discuss that whenever you have a random distribution, the maximum that the classifier can throw out is 50%. So this is what is showing you over here. So this is the important thing, like you have to have a testing data set also. But please note, if your data set is not that big, then you can still go for training and validation. But if your data set is very big, like you are working on big data type of thing, then you can take this and avail this facility of having a testing data set different from that of validation data set. So that is the concept of and the need of having testing data set. So any doubts here, or then we will otherwise we'll move forward. Okay. So today we will start with another topic which we are calling as dropout. So let's just a quick feedback. Are you able to listen me? Like any otherwise I will check back the internet.
Yes, we can hear
Okay.
you.
Okay. So now today we will start with another topic which we are calling as dropout. I think most of you know that, but today we will discuss it in some different fashion, and I hope you will understand more details in dropout as compared to what you have right now. So let's discuss this and see whether you will be benefited from this or not. So this is the dropout thing that we will discuss today. And in one liner, it is basically a simple way to prevent neural networks from overfitting. So it's a very simple way of preventing overfitting. So I hope everybody knows about it, but we will see why this is so in our coming slides. And please note, I want to point out here that this is the author who has actually published this work, and the name of this person is Nitish Shrivastava, and in 2014 he has published this work. And please note that the important point to discuss here is that this person, when he published his work, was a graduate student at that time. I think he was doing his bachelor's or master's over there. So you can feel that what kind of level this person has, during his masters or in your on or in his bachelor's he has done that. So anybody who is doing his bachelor's or master's has a capability of doing it, if he wants to do it. And if he doesn't want to do it, then it's a different story. But I just wanted to show you his his profile also. And he is currently also, I think he is doing a PhD over there in University of Toronto. And this is the paper that he has published, Dropout, a simple way to prevent neural network from overfitting. And you can see the amount of citations that people have cited this work. 23,000 people have cited. 23,000 means, you can see the total citation this author is having. And for this particular paper, he has 23,000 citations. And the work that he has published was done during his bachelor's or I think first years of masters. So by this you can observe the level that students have. So if you say that we don't know how to do it and we don't know what to do, then he must be your a sole motivator. You can look at him and you can get motivated. Like if somebody wants to do some kind of research or doing his wants to do his masters in his future, if they have a plan of doing it, then they should look up to him to get motivated. Okay, so so what Dropout is, let's start with a brief history, like how they got motivated and started this Dropout stuff. So in 1995, there is one guy, Bishop. Actually, he proved that the training with the input noise, that is when you actually train with the input noise, is actually equivalent to a regularization that you are doing. So this is actually what he has proved in his 1995 paper. I will list down that name of that paper also in our coming slides. But for here, you can see that this person has proved at that time that when you inject the noise, it's equivalent to the regularization that you are doing on the neural network. So in 2014, the person which I have just mentioned, Shrivastava, actually used this idea. He used the idea that was thrown out by this paper in 1995, and he injected the noise to the internal layers of the neural network that we will see now. So injection of the noise was done based on the motivation that he has taken from this paper, and injecting of the noise enforces smooth functions between input and output mapping. And this injection of the noise, which we are calling as dropout, is actually doing that. So we will see how smooth functions are implemented when you are using dropouts. So to give you a brief overview of to understand what this statement is, like when this person is saying inject a noise into a neural network and you will get a regularization type of stuff. So let's prove that, like why it is like that. So what I am doing here is I am taking a very simple neural network which we have already studied so many times now. So it's a simple neural network where we have input image here, input node. So this is basically your input node with having n features. So here you have n features. Input node with n features and one output, which is given over here. Let me take some other color. So this is the output and this is the input node having n features. So you can see this is first feature, second feature, third and nth feature. So what I am doing is I am only considering this simple case, and this convention you already know, we have discussed so many times. So this is the weight which connects the first neuron to the first neuron to the first neuron here. And similarly you can look for others also. Now what I am doing is I am sampling epsilon naught. I am sampling this random variable from a normal distribution having zero mean and this variance sigma. So when I am sampling this random variable epsilon naught, what I am doing is I am actually adding this to the input which you have here, that is x1, x2, x3, xn separately. So we are sampling epsilon 1, then we are sampling epsilon 2, epsilon 3, epsilon n. So I am adding it to the input samples. Earlier we had only x1i, but now it is corrupted by adding noise. And why we are adding noise? Because we want to prove that you add noise is equivalent to you are doing regularization. Okay. So when you add noise to this input, which is the original input and the noise free input, you are adding it epsilon naught k here. So what you get is x tilde k superscript I. So this I is the number of samples as we have already discussed. So tilde is actually representing that you are adding a noise here. So this is the convention that I am following. So y hat, what is y hat? The y hat is the output that you are getting here in the neural network. So y hat is summation of all the weights that are connected to the input node. And right now I am taking a noise free input xk. So that's why I am writing it as y hat here to denote that the output y hat is coming from the noise free input xk here. But now when we add noise, then it's written over here where we are writing xki plus epsilon naught k, and this k is running from 1 to n, and now I am writing it as this tilde. So this y tilde corresponds to noisy input. So this is actually noisy input, and this is noise free input. So when you have this, then you can write it in two parts, this one and this one. So it's easy, right? From here you can do that. And this part, which is this one, this you can write it as y hat, where y hat is the original y hat due to the noise free inputs. So I can write it as y hat plus this. So we have y tilde equal to y hat plus this part. So now actually what we are doing is we are interested in expectation of y tilde. Y tilde, please note, y tilde is the noisy output, output due to the noisy input. So y tilde is that, and y hat is the actual labels that you already have. So they are actual labels. So you want to calculate the expectation of the expectation of this, that y hat minus y. Sorry, this has to be here. So it is square here. So you have to calculate the expectation of the difference between the two. And why we are doing expectation? Because we are doing some noise type of simulations here, and so that's why random variable randomness is coming to the network. So that's why we are taking expectation of this particular expression. So when you take expectation of this particular expression, then you just expand it by writing your y tilde, which is given over here, by this y hat plus this. So this we have already discussed over here. You can see we are putting this y tilde here or over this side. So now what I am doing is I am just adjusting the terms. So this is now this one and this is here, just readjustment, and then simply what we are doing is we are expanding it in terms of a plus b whole square. So this is your a square, this is your b square, and this is your 2ab term. So this is simple expansion of a plus b whole square. So now what we will see is important things coming up here, and the important thing is, first of all, you see this one and this one. So here y hat minus y is the random variable which is actually completely uncorrelated with epsilon naught k. So there is no correlation. Why there is no correlation? Because y is a true label. So y is true label, and y tilde, y hat, sorry. So if you see this expression of y hat, there is no epsilon naught here. So there is no epsilon naught variable, random variable here. So these two, the combination of y hat minus y is completely independent of this epsilon naught k. So when they are completely independent of each other, then this term will become 0 because there is no correlation between the two. So if there is no correlation, then this value will become 0. Now we are left with these two. In these two, the important thing is the samples of epsilon naught I that I am taking from normal distribution of 0 mean and variance sigma square are independent and identically distributed. So they are IID samples. So if they are assumed to be IID, then the product of epsilon naught I, epsilon naught j will be gone. So there will be no interproducts. So here, if there is no interproducts, then this, as you can see here, you will have interproducts, like you will have k and j also. So when there is no interproducts, so the only term that will be left, so there will be 0. The interproducts of I and j will be 0 because they are IIDs. So that's why what will happen is the only terms with k will be left, the only ones with have k. So from here you come this side, and from here what happens is you are actually taking the epsilon naught and the expectation of the epsilon naught out, and it will be sigma square, and you will be left with this expression. So if you are having this expression now, then you can see clearly that this is the original loss that you normally do. Like you take the y hat minus y, where y hat is the output of the neural network and y is the true label, and you take the squared loss that you normally do. So this is the normal stuff, and this is your regularization parameter lambda, and this is the r of w that I was discussing. So this r is actually a function of w, and that is equivalent to r is saying as summation k running from 1 to n square of w. So it's acting as a regularizer. So now you can see how when you inject noise into this neural network which is given over here, it is equivalent to L2 regularization. So it's a L2 regularization. It is regularizing your neural network with the lambda equal to sigma square. So you can see now that how injecting the noise is actually equivalent to creating a regularization type of stuff. So everybody is okay with what I have explained here, or any doubts? Okay, so today I think it's already okay. Still, we have 5 minutes. I can just go around and show you something. So this is basically the dropout, and what is dropout is shown over here. I have taken this from paper, from where it is introduced. So here we have a standard neural network, and when you do a dropout, means you are actually dropping out some of the neurons. So when you say probability of point, let us say 0.7, that means you are keeping 0.7 of the 70% of the neurons. Please note, it is key probability. So you are actually keeping 70% of the neurons, and you are throwing out 30% of it. So when I am saying P means keeping probability, you are keeping them and throwing out the rest of them. So here you can see it is throwing out this neuron and this neuron in this layer. It is throwing out this neuron, this neuron and this neuron in the second layer, and here it is throwing out even the inputs also. Some of the inputs are also thrown. So we will see how it is possible, and this is only possible when you have original input X and you add noise to it, then you will get something like this situation where you are throwing out some of the inputs. We will see it in details. So when you see this type of situation where you have throwing out of the neurons, then you will see something something magically happening. And what is that? In earlier situation, when you consider this neuron is actually getting inputs from here, and it's a very complex function. It's something like this. It's getting a very complex input from all of them. So it's a very complex function, and it's implementing a non-linear combination of all these neurons, and it can implement a very complex function here as a approximator of any function. But here in this particular situation, if you see this particular neuron, it's only getting input from this and this. So only two inputs. But earlier it was getting three inputs, this one and this one, and these three are still getting complex inputs from the lower layers. So, but in this situation, most of the neurons are gone and very little neurons are left. This one and this one, and this is dependent on this one and this one and this one. So it's a very simple function compared to this one. So now what you can see is um, this particular type of topology will be able to perform very simple tasks. So it will implement simple models. As you can see, most of the W's are gone, so it will implement very simple models. Whereas this particular model will implement highly complex models. So, so this type of neural network will tend to overfit, but this particular type of neural network will not overfit. So by using dropouts, you are actually reducing the number of neurons and you are making them less here. And once you make them less means less number of W's, and if less number of W's are there means less overfitting, and you are uh, tending towards a high bias region. So if you crank or if you make probability very high or very low, sorry, if you make only probability of zero point 0.2, let us say, that means only 20% will be there and rest of them will be gone. That means you are actually forcing this particular model to become high bias. Please note, the probability has to be some reasonable probability. You cannot make it to any value. But if you make it zero point 0.2 means you are actually forcing this neuron model to become a high bias and making it to enter into high bias region. So this is a slight overview of what dropout is. We will discuss more details about it in our next lecture, and see that when you are shutting some of the neurons on and off. I think maybe you have studied image processing or not. I don't know, but it's something equivalent to you are adding a salt and pepper noise, something like that. So you are actually putting a probability p and 1 minus p. So it's something like and when you add salt and pepper noise to the image, it's doing something like this. So maybe I don't know whether you know it or not, but from image processing I have taken this concept. So this is actually regarding the training phase of the dropout. So when you train, during the training phase, you drop out some of the neurons to make to make the neural network less complex as compared to when it is on the training phase. As earlier, when there is no dropout, compared to that, it is very simple model. So for today, I am stopping out here, and we will discuss more details of the dropout in our next lecture. So if anybody has any questions, please let me know. Otherwise, I will end this class. Any questions? Okay, then please you can leave, and tomorrow, next day after tomorrow, we will meet again. Okay, bye.